Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Vikings Season 4, Episode 16, Crossings. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Vikings, so I'll have to start off with the spoiler warning for Vikings up to Season 4, Episode 16. If you haven't seen up to this point, you may not want to watch this video. Otherwise, some things may be spoiled for you. So this is the first episode we get without Ragnar Lothbrok, and many may be wondering how the show will go without him, but as I expressed last week, I still have complete faith in the show to continue onward and be just as good without him. And if anything, I think the new dynamic will shake things up and make things even more interesting. So the episode mainly deals with the aftermath of Ragnar's death, which makes a lot of sense. We see Ragnar's son coping with the loss of Ragnar and their mother. So Lagertha has made herself at home as leader, but they are not at all happy about this, and Ivar outright challenges her to a fight to the death. And to be honest, I saw this on the preview for this episode, so I thought that they'd actually have a fight to the death, in which case Lagertha would obviously lose because Ivar can't die yet, because I know from history he still has a lot to do. So I was very afraid we'd get a Lagertha death in this episode, which I thought would have been too much to have Ragnar die in one episode and Lagertha in the next. So I'm glad that they didn't do that. As it turns out, the preview is a bit misleading, as previews ought to be, as Lagertha simply refused the challenge, stating that she didn't want to kill Ivar. However, I have my doubts that Lagertha will survive past the end of the season, as at the end of the episode she goes to see the seer and asks him point blank if she will be killed by a son of Ragnar, and he says yes. And so far in the show, the seer's predictions have all come true, so it seems like it's only a matter of time before, one of them, not necessarily Ivar, but any of the four, kills her. In fact, it would be a bit ironic if it was Bjorn who killed her, as technically he's the son of Ragnar, but he's also Lagertha's son, so you'd never expect him. But I doubt it. I think it will be Ivar or one of the other two who are currently in Keteket. But the prophecy sets up an interesting dynamic that was explored in the previous episode that Ragnar brought up about the seer's prophecy being self-fulfilling. As he said, because he told Lagertha that her child would die, she kind of let it happen. So the same could be said here, that because he told her she'd be killed by a son of Ragnar, she's going to let a son of Ragnar kill her. It seems like a lesser person would kill Ragnar's sons before they had a chance to kill them, but I don't think that's how Lagertha will react. I think she's more of the mind that there's no way for her to change the seer's prophecies, and she's simply going to accept it that it will happen. So I do think Lagertha may likely die before the season's over. Now, it was kind of funny seeing her address Keteket and talk about how their defenses need to be built up because many covet what they have and they could attack, and to see the faces on Ragnar's son, you get the strong sense of the irony in her words, because that's exactly what she did, so she's being a bit of a hypocrite here. So at the end of the episode, multiple people get visions that confirm Ragnar's death, such as Lagertha seeing him come to her in the middle of the night, Bjorn and Ragnar's other son, whose name I can't pronounce at the moment, they also saw a vision that confirmed Ragnar is dead, and in Keteket, this guy with one eye, whom we saw sailing in the previous episode, so I had no idea who he was, he shows up and tells Ragnar's sons outright that Ragnar is dead, and he describes perfectly how he died. So I'm not sure who this guy is meant to be. Is he a vision that only they can see? Is he another godlike figure like Hebard, or is he just some guy who was in England at the time of Ragnar's death? I'm not sure, although I tend to think he's not a vision, otherwise he probably would have appeared to Bjorn as well. However, he didn't go to Lagertha, just Ragnar's son, so that is interesting. something. Maybe they already showed this guy in a previous episode and I simply don't remember, and tons of people in the comments are going to point this out to me. Maybe, because it's been a year since I've seen the previous seasons and I only watched them once, so I don't remember everything. Anyway, I wonder if they will now publicly acknowledge that Ragnar is dead and have a funeral for him, because before Lagertha refused to acknowledge this, and then public was like, oh, who knows what happened to Ragnar, maybe he'll come back. It's going to be interesting if Lagertha is going to support Ragnar's son's quest to go to England to avenge their father, because if she doesn't, she will be signing her own death warrant, as she'll be the first obstacle in their way for vengeance. So we did get one scene in the episode in Wessex with King Ekbark, Judith, and Aethelwulf dealing with the incoming threat of Ragnar's sons. In a very rare example, Aethelwulf is actually being the smart one, as he's dismissive of Ragnar's promise to tell his sons only to attack Alar and not them, and as we know, that's actually very wise. But it's obvious that Ekbark doesn't take this threat seriously, even though he said he did. It was obvious he was just placating Aethelwulf, as he put him in charge of preparing the defenses, and he knows he's useless, so if he was serious about it, he would take charge of it himself. But he's not going to help in any way, meaning he's not taking it seriously when he should. So this is a rare case where Aethelwulf is actually right. So now I have to talk a bit about Bjorn's quest in the Mediterranean, or to the Mediterranean, as it didn't seem to be going very well with them running low on resources. So we got some gossip with King Finehair talking about Bjorn perhaps being cursed by the gods and that they may have to kill him. Although he may have changed his mind after their successful raids at the end of the episode, I don't think he's going to let it go entirely. Finehair has been an obvious villain, or at least someone who's going to be a problem for our main characters ever since he was first introduced. In fact, it's kind of too typical and predictable. It's part of the reason why I'm not very interested in this storyline as much as I am in the other ones. That, and it is yet to show any storytelling dynamic. This episode was very risky in showing just how brutal the Vikings are, led by Bjorn, our quote-unquote hero, as they slaughter a bunch of innocent villagers going about their day, and the scene that was very risky and difficult to watch where the Vikings break through a door where a bunch of women are hiding in fear, and it's heavily implied that they rape them all. I'm sure some will say the show is promoting rape by having the quote-unquote heroes of the show perform such despicable acts, but this show doesn't actually portray any of its characters as heroes or villains, just different characters in conflict, and the show has had a history of being completely frank and open about how brutal the Vikings are. After all, they are Vikings, who are best known for raping and pillaging, so this scene, as hard to watch as it was totally in keeping with a real-life history. And that's one thing the YouTube channel, one that I like and often watch, History Buffs, praised this show for, was being frank and honest about its portrayal of history and not trying to whitewash history and change it in order to make the main characters more heroic or good or relatable, when that doesn't actually match up with history at all. And thus this is another very clear reminder that although the show follows the Vikings, they are not by any means the good guys, and this in fact creates a realistic dynamic, and it actually reminds the viewer that people like Alar are actually a bit justified in hating the Vikings and being fearful of them, as their MO is to attack and kill defenseless people and steal their riches and take their women as slaves, which is exactly how villains of any show would behave. Anyway, it's not that bothers me, it's that there needs to be a bit more dynamic to the storyline, so some stakes other than the Vikings simply pillaging and murdering as they go, in order for it to be interesting to me. There were a few interesting points in this storyline, though, mainly with Floki and Helga, as Floki was so overwhelmed by the Muslims' practice of their faith and how devoted they were to their gods, he forbade the others from killing them. This actually surprised me a bit, as I thought Floki was very disdainful and intolerant of any other religious beliefs, but apparently not. apparently pure faith impresses him regardless of which god they worship. And Helga, who talked about wanting to have another child, as soon as I saw her watch Finehair kill a young girl's mother, I knew she would want to take the now orphaned girl for her own. And she does so against Floki's wishes, so I'm not sure if anything good will come of this, but we'll have to see. It's also interesting seeing Rollo take delight in the murder and pillaging, as this seemed against his more recent civilized manner. And in fact, at the end, while the others celebrate, he seemed a bit more mournful. So maybe he's regretting reverting back to his savage ways. And of course, Finehair and his brothers are continually portrayed as the more bloodthirsty and savages than the others, so I do think the show is setting them up to be, villains in a sense. So my rating for Crossings out of 10 is a 7, very good. Not an awesome episode, but it continues to deliver on historically unbiased, accurate portrayal of Vikings while progressing some of the individual storylines nicely and setting up for some interesting conflicts with Ivar, Lagertha, Ekbark, Floki, Helga, Finehair, and Bjorn. So all in all, an interesting episode that fits into the season nicely. So that's it for my review of Crossings. Be sure to check back here as I continue to review episodes of Vikings, and also be sure to check out my channel for many more videos on shows like Game of Thrones, Star Trek, and more, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.